Welcome to the Civic Pulse with Congressman David Bonior. I should say former Congressman. You're not still serving. And myself, Brian Brady. It's good to see you on this Saturday morning. We're taping this September 13th. Probably send it out tomorrow on the 14th. So
Okay.
if we miss something in the news cycle, you realize this is a Saturday morning. And this is a fast-moving news cycle. David, it's been a crazy week. How are you holding up through it?
Okay. Yeah, I'm doing all right. It's a lot of news. There's always a lot of news now because so many people to make it and so many people covering it. But yeah, I'm interested in what's been happening in regard to Ukraine, and I know we're going to talk about that in a little bit. And then I guess the big story of the week domestically was the assassination of Mr. Kirk.
Yeah, and so much has been said on this. By the way, you always look a little happier than me, and I think it's because you don't go on social media, uh, unlike me, who spends way too much time on
Yeah.
that, which is
I
part.
try to, unfortunately, I try to avoid it as much as I can. Yeah, but
Why?
you have to, you have to pay attention to what's happening. So at least know what's happening.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. You're leaving for Ukraine shortly, and we're going to do some shows from Ukraine. So our main goal on this is to talk about previewing that trip and the why and what you're going to do there. I think we have, since we're called the Civic Pulse, we have to talk a few minutes about what happened this week. I think to say
Yeah.
something original, let's take the Mr. Rogers approach and uh, and talk about how do we find folks on the other side of the aisle who are good faith actors in trying to solve the political violence. And one person comes to mind. It seems like the governor of Utah was doing some honest, good faith brokering in his press conference. But where do we find the folks to build this bridge of disagreeing civilly? You have any thoughts on that, David?
Well, I think you maybe have to find them outside of the political world on Capitol Hill in Washington, because, frankly, I think this violence piece, you can look at it from the perspective of how the violence is committed.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, it was capital, it was murder, the gun. And that whole gun issue is an issue in itself.
Oh, sure.
That we need to, people haven't faced up to it yet in the country.
Yeah.
And if they don't, it's going to continue, and we're going to end up with what have experienced, but not only with individuals, but with kids in school, people at their houses of worship. It's a disease. We're really unique in the world in terms of the number of people that get killed with guns because our laws are so pathetically weak. So the question is, how do we, how do you get that nut? And then of course, then there's the other side of just the whole question of how we deal civilly or uncivilly with each other in our dialogue. And we have to respect people's opinion on the other side and just use language. I mean, you can go on social media. I haven't done it, but I've heard about it. Sometimes people will even send me stuff that's pretty bad. I mean, in terms of cartoons and mimes and all this stuff that just exacerbates the problem. It just pisses people off on the other side, and they do the same thing on to our side of the political spectrum. So we need to have some bumper rules here in terms of how much bumping is going to go on, and then what's legitimate and what makes sense and what is not. And we don't have that, and it's kind of like the Wild West out there.
Yeah, it really is a social media thing. I put on my, the last 4 years I've been on social media a lot more because I've had a little more time. And one book I recommend for everyone, or an interview I read. Anna Lemke wrote Dopamine Nation, Stanford professor, and she actually was a high school classmate of mine. Great read about the addiction society and all these many addictions that we all suffer from, and how you can kind of get free of it. So it inspired me to reduce my alcohol drink.
Okay, good.
And now it's on this. I just installed the Freedom app, which you're not a social media addict like me, but those algorithms are they know you better than you know yourself.
Oh, I know they know me. They know where I'm hiding out. Yeah.
But this Freedom app, and I recommend it to our viewers if you're a social media addict, it shuts down your social media certain hours a day. So from 7:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. I can't go on my social media now. I can only take a look in the early morning or late at night. So that's what
but you can get information from the established news media and from friends who you're in contact with, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that good enough? Or
what's illuminating to me about social media that I've learned in the last 4 years is that there's two reasons I think it's super powerful on our society, right? And this young man, Tyler Robertson, was very influenced. It's the loneliness epidemic. It's where a lot of, especially young men, are solving.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And two, just on the political side, is the news media, the legacy media is on social media, and so they're watching the warfare.
Why don't you send them the app then?
That's a good.
No, I think you're right. There's a lot. So part of the problem is the established news media.
Yeah, and I just think Gavin Newsom's tactics right now for those folks who aren't on social media seem abrasive and over the top. But for those of us who live on social media a lot, we're like, finally a Democrat who's throwing down on social media like the conservatives do. Like it's a different wiring in the brain.
Yeah.
Living on social media, it rewires. As Marshall McLuhan said, the medium is the message. It rewires your brain, how you think and how you feel.
No, I know. I sense that. I've read about that, and I don't want any part of that. That I can avoid it. I don't want to be addicted to it. I mean, I have a social media crowd that I interact with on a regular basis in my community, my family, the community I live in, the neighborhood I live in. I get a good feedback. I go for walks every day, and I bump into neighbors, and we chat. And then when I chat too much, I find different routes to take so I can actually get my walk in.
That's great. No, I love it. And I think, I think podcasting and Substack, these long form media innovations actually are a hopeful off ramp to the.
Oh yeah.
10 second, hopefully our content isn't rage content.
Yeah.
Scott Galloway, last thing I'll say on this is Scott Galloway, who's a influential online person, sort of a centrist Dem, and does an economics pod, but also political stuff. Just said he's been focusing on the lost generation of young men.
Yeah,
years.
It's a good thing to focus in on because it's real and it's dangerous and it's really tragic. It's sad.
Yeah,
and we have to get people sensitive to that, and we haven't done that as well as we should in at least our party. I would say that.
Yeah, and I think these his argument is that young men have been dropping. They're academics. They're just school isn't designed for them, and they're struggling, and they're male role models. So it's interesting. But he said we found something more addictive than sex online, and that's rage. That was his take. He goes, the algorithms have realized that the rage algorithm is more addictive than anything, and that's so we have all these rage algorithms pushing us. So let's figure out as a society. I don't know how you regulate that or stop it, but clearly the dialogue won't improve until we figure some of that out.
Yeah, but moments like this week, I watch the news, cable news mostly, so I get a sense from watching a little bit of that every day.
Yeah.
That what they're trying to. I mean, they're having people on the show who are more balanced on the right than traditionally. I mean, they're nervous too at this particular time that they don't want to stoke the fires that creates more of this. They want to find people who can ameliorate the negativity and the violence and all of those pieces of it. And they're looking for people to come and speak who have a tradition of that, or at least have a perspective that's a little different than their colleagues.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we'll keep an eye on this. Hopefully, things will start to get slightly better this week. It would help if the guy in the White House knew how to.
Yeah, I mean, he stoked it again. I mean, there you go. And so
we'll see.
By blaming it, on the left, which is, I mean, I just read something this morning, I think it was, he came from a Republican family,
Oh,
and
Tyler Rye, the shooter, yeah.
Yeah, and he doesn't have any history of voting.
Yeah.
So, come on, it happens on both sides of it. It's mostly been on the other side.
Yeah.
Throughout my lifetime. So let's get real about all of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know they tried to shoot the president. They've tried to shoot a lot of Democrats, and they got him. So leaders.
Quick pivot to just something locally, because I'm in the Chicago area, right?
Yeah.
The invasion has not come because it sounds like, and this is just an interesting, I think, analysis, is Governor Pritzker's and the Mayor Johnson's resistance have convinced the Trump administration that they would get caught in legal turmoil and stalemates if they no guard in. Who knows what's behind the scenes?
Well, I'm glad it didn't happen. I knew the president was looking for another place, because he was mentioning some other opportunities. He said, I guess Nashville is where they've settled. They've got a Republican governor.
Yeah, or Memphis,
Tennessee, but not Nashville, Memphis.
Memphis, yeah.
Memphis, yeah. And they have a Republican governor there in Tennessee. So that's probably what they're going to do next. But people are really fed up with it in DC. It's just shut down all kinds of businesses. It's been a mess. And then, you walk the streets and you see tanks and you see people in fatigues, and they have guns, they have long guns out, and it's just really bad. We're
in a tizzy here. I'd like your opinion on this. Is people are upset. Tizzy is the wrong word. Immigrant was shot to death by ICE yesterday in Franklin Park, right outside Chicago.
Oh, I heard that. Yeah.
Community, but ICE was doing a street stop. A car tried to stop a car, right, which we don't normally see immigration do, and nobody knows exactly what happened. The man had dropped his child off at school. They say he dragged the ICE officer, and then the ICE officer shot him. What would this is an area of did you ever get into disputes between the role of federal law enforcement and local law enforcement and this kind of thing in when you were congressman? And
not so much. No, not that I was really involved with. No. I mean, we all got the law. I mean, when I was in office, one of the things we did, and everyone seemed to be pleased with it, Republicans and Democrats, we did this with Clinton. We put, I forget how many, was it 1 million police officers on the street or something across the country? We provided the money for it, and it's worked out really well. So we kept it locally, but we financed it through the federal budget.
Interesting. I'll share one little moment from my week here, an upbeat story, but sort of starts on a sad note. 80 years ago, my grandfather was shot to death as a Chicago police officer.
Oh, I think you told me that once. Yeah. Tell that story to people.
Well, he was a couple blocks from getting off his shift, and, some low-level mobsters were holding up a card game or something. The murder, what was uplifting about this is we commemorated it and in Chicago, and some family came in. But I'm in Evanston, and the new city manager is my cousin Luke, and he's formed a really good relationship with with the police chief, who's from the community, an African American woman, and we haven't had a murder in 3 years with these two leading the city, which is the longest stretch in Evanston.
Yeah, that makes a difference. It really makes a difference who's at the top, who's leading, and so yeah, it's.
You can turn things around with good leadership, as with my story. But the police chief came out to the commemoration and was just a lovely person, and we can do better with ethical leaders, right?
Oh yes, indeed. We got a lot of room for improvement there.
Yeah. So let's go. We last 15 minutes. We're going to do some live shoots from Ukraine. When's the exact day you're leaving, David?
I'm leaving on the 19th.
The 19th. So this is your third trip to Ukraine.
Third trip since 22. I've been there prior to that, but yeah, this is since the full-scale invasion. Yeah,
I really admire whether Ukraine's doing well, poorly, wherever it is in the news. Your focus has always been steady and consistent on Ukraine.
Well, I think it's the most significant foreign policy piece in today, and for a lot of reasons, and I'll talk about that maybe that's my introduction to talk about it.
Yeah, go right.
Because I think the way the people have been looking at it in this country is really not really how we should approach it. I think we should look at it from a broader security perspective. And that means Ukraine is a part of the rest of the 27 members of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. Mm-hmm. And, if they don't have to actually have membership, but they have to be central to the planning of how Europe is going to be secure. And why is that? Well, Ukraine has the largest army in Europe. If you think Russia is not, it's half and half in Asia, half in Europe. Yeah. But a country they have the largest military there. They have the most experience. They're excellent with drones. They've taken out 2/3 of all the Russian military equipment in this war has been destroyed by drones, which they kind of invented to defend themselves. And it's made a huge difference in their viability, and it's changed warfare and defense budgets and everything else across the planet. So there was a great speech that was given by Ursula von der Leyen, who is the head of the EU. She gave it this past week. This was right around the time with the Russians sent 19, not one, not two, 19 drones and missiles that have hit Poland.
Trump said it might have been an accident.
Yeah, he's still saying that. I think he's still saying, but nobody's saying that anymore. He was, 19, and they were directed at specific areas, and targets. So the question is, Putin is probing again, and she came up with she's had this idea, and she unveiled it about the same time, of this drone kind of a dome where the drones protect everybody, and they invest the money in it. And it's an interesting idea. She had some other ideas too in the speech. This is their kind of State of the Union speech that the EU president gives, and which included using the Russian assets, which are huge, billions and billions of $290 billion worth of assets in American dollars that are out there for us to use and to help the Europeans get up to that 5% from 2% of their budgets for defense, which they need to do because we've been taking care of all that since World War II. Mm-hmm. And so that's happening, and it's happening at an accelerated speed now in Europe because they sense and they know of the danger. Mm-hmm. But central in all of this is the working with Ukraine, because Ukraine has a lot to offer the rest of Europe in terms of manufacturing abilities for weapons, because they've been moving their percentage of weapons that they're using from 20% to 30% to 40%, now up to 50%. And they have the technology and know how to use these new sophisticated systems like the different types of drones that have evolved throughout this war. So they have a lot to offer the rest of Europe, and Europe needs to partner with them in a stronger way, and they have. I remember watching watching the meeting in the White House between Zelensky and
Mhm.
Trump when the vice president was there, and they were all jumping all over Zelensky. And I said to myself, this is going to have a huge repercussion
Mhm.
in Europe. They're watching this, and they know this tells them they got to do it because this isn't going to happen from Trump. And they didn't care for the way that he treated Zelensky. It was treated anyway. Uh,
Yeah.
so, and that's exactly what happened. As soon as that happened, they started to meet. They got together in England. The top leaders of the country. They ended up, as you know, just recently coming over here and sitting with Zelensky and Trump together on
Yeah.
this. That was unusual.
Yeah.
All those leaders to do that. So they are very serious now about what they need to do because they sense the real danger, how bad Trump Putin is, and the probing that he's doing in Poland and other places. She wants von der Leyen, the EU president. She
Mhm.
wants protection of drones all the way from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea, and
Yeah.
all the countries that are on that, on that edge there.
It's always seemed to me that the Korean War model of the end of that war, and I don't know enough about that history. I'm curious if you do. Where you just get a ceasefire and you draw a line and nothing's formally agreed to other than the ceasefire, is the best possible outcome. What's your knowledge? You just gave it. By the way, you just got a lot of media in Canada because you gave a speech on the what was it? The Balkan, Albania. What was your speech in
No,
Canada
no, his speech was on Ukraine.
on Ukraine?
Yeah, yeah. They have a big in Winnipeg. I was in Winnipeg,
Yeah,
city of it's almost 1 million people, and they have a huge Ukrainian population there because it's the prairie. It's very similar in what it looks like and agriculture, all that up there.
yeah.
So a lot of Ukrainians migrated there, not only recently, but through the various stages of migration. They go back over 100 years now.
Oh, sure. What was your tell us your themes there, and then tell me if the Korean analogy is accurate.
Well, I'll start with the Korean analogy. I think there's, you know, that's not to say that they haven't had differences in skirmishes on the border
Yeah,
in North and South Korea,
yeah.
but for the most part, the peace is held,
Hmm.
and that's a long hold. I mean, Korean War was what in the 53, something like that.
About 70 years, 75 years.
So,
Yeah,
yeah, a long time. So it's expensive, but it's the difference with that in Ukraine. It's the difference is 750 miles in Ukraine and Russian border
yeah,
that you got to secure. There, it's like maybe an eighth of that. It's smaller. So
yeah,
the composition on the border of troops is diminished in comparatively speaking,
yeah.
and so you've got to consider that as well. And but the people can't be afraid to having German troops and French troops in Ukraine and Ukraine or having Ukrainian troops in their borders.
Yeah.
In Latvia and Estonia and those countries in the Baltics and some of the others, the Finns.
So why did the Canadians get put you on the front page there? What were your main insights you were dropping
Well,
off?
I don't know that I had many main insights. I mean, I was talking about one of the things I was talking about was what I do there.
Yeah.
Why am I there? What do I do? And I'm Ukrainian American. I care deeply about the country. I think Zelensky is the most moral leader we have in the world stage today. He's
Mhm.
an incredible person, and I think that's drawn my interest. But I think it's drawn the world's interest. If you go around, there's a lot of Ukrainian flags in Canada as well as in the United States. I've got one right outside my window here, and a lot of my neighbors have them too.
Oh, sure.
So I would say I talked about, I'm there now basically to work on mental health issues because this war has consumed the country and they have a huge mental health crisis.
Yeah.
Something called post-traumatic stress disorder, which is PTSD for short. You'll hear that those initials quite often in this discussion. And these are people who are kids, and I'm focused on children who have been affected by this, and also by combatants, the heroes who sit in those ditches for 6 months or 9 months or a year and a half, and sometimes 2 years.
Sure.
To defend those positions. And sometimes if you go out to Donetsk, those people out there have been there since 14 defending their that's 11 years. These are real heroes.
Yeah,
a lot of them have lost their lives, and the ones who haven't lost their lives have post-traumatic stress disorder, which means they have a real mental health crisis of anxiety, and they can't get certain images out of their head, and those images are triggered during the day with sounds, with smells, all kinds of different things. If you don't get therapy, if you're a child or if you're a combatant, you don't get therapy, your chances of having a decent life is not good. It's terrible because it leads eventually to addictions, drug addiction, alcohol, you name it. And so we're trying to get more resources into Ukraine to work with kids and to work with the combatants who are keeping the country from being overrun by Putin and the Russians. And we're trying to get them the help they deserve. And the best way is obviously, so it doesn't spread any further, is to end the war. Well, that's not looking really good right now, as we all know. But we can get help to those who are fighting and those who have been affected by this.
And you're going to go to 3 different locations generally, right? You'll be in Western Ukraine and Lviv area and some areas around that. And then you're going to Odessa, right? And then
Black Sea.
And you're going to be meeting with a bunch of different organizations. And we're going to try and do about 3 shows. So if we can get get a good internet selection service from you.
Oh, yeah. We'll do the best we can, but we should be able to do something well. Yeah.
Is there, you haven't been to Odessa before. Is there any part of the trip that you're particularly excited about? I know you're excited about the whole trip, but is there something?
Well, we have already raised, we've raised money for this proposal. I did that this year, and I raised with others a little over $100,000. Now, it doesn't seem like a lot of money given what we're talking about here on this show, but it will help seed different programs that to get the therapy in there for kids and for soldiers, psychological therapy that can be individual or in a group or whatever. And then there are different types of therapies that children respond to better: poetry, art, nature. But adults, especially those who are fighting, respond very well to nature. So the setting for all of this is determinant upon who needs it. And so, yeah, we've been able to we gave 6 grants out to these organizations that I've worked with now for 3 years that I have a lot of faith in. They're good quality, they do good work, they're honest, and they make a huge difference. So we're trying to broaden that. The thing is to broaden the scale because there's so many people that have been affected in Ukraine.
Oh, yeah. And before we go, tell us who are your colleagues on this trip?
I'm going with Eric Trupin. He's a medical doctor, and Eric is works with young people today and trying to help them, those who suffer from psychological illnesses. And he's also an innovative. He's a professor at University of Washington State,
Mhm.
and he's invented a poetry program that's really great. It was gonna we had that program in place at Save Ukraine in Kiev. It's a program run. These are people who work with the kids who are captured and abducted by the Russians. They rescue them, get them back, but then they have to work with them because that's very traumatic to be taken from your home and then to be indoctrinated that you're a Russian, not a Ukrainian. And it's
Yeah.
so we're
Eric came on your second trip. I was
he
with you.
did, he did,
Brilliant
yeah.
guy and wonderful guy. Yeah.
Yeah, nice guy, a good person. And then we also had he's a psychiatrist. We
Mhm.
also had another psychiatrist, my colleague, Jim McDermott, who went with me on the first trip, along with Peter Daly, who was a fabulous priest and provider and great guy. And then this trip, in addition to Eric, we're going to have another Vietnam veteran, Jack Devine, who I've known since 40 years.
Mhm.
So he's from the Detroit area, and he's helpful in trying to bring veterans of Ukrainian Americans, and U.S. veterans together to work on this problem, since we have a U.S. experience with it. And then we have two other fellows who served in the U.S. military at very high levels. They were officers. I think one of them was a Green Beret, and John, I'll just use that name right now, and his friend Ron, who also I think served in combat in it was Afghanistan or Iraq. I'm not quite sure. So I have not actually met them. I've been on Zooms with them, but
Yeah.
I've met them, and they're going to be in Poland for the first part of the trip, and they're going to join us halfway through.
Well, thanks for doing this trip and showing up as a good American concerned about people's welfare.
Well, there are a lot of Americans there that are doing really great work.
Yeah.
They're here, they're in our country, their country as well. But I mean, some of them have spent a great deal of time there, and they do fabulous work and all kinds with kids, with veterans, with families. You name it, they're all over the place. And there's a huge number of Europeans who are doing the same thing. That's one of the reasons that Ukraine has been able to sustain themselves for this. They see you on the street and they will come up to you and thank you, because you can't hide your Americanism, evidently.
You see as my wife says, they see your white socks and they know you're American. Anti-white socks there. Well, I'm glad you get to go to Odessa. I know I can't, my fear of.
Well, I should tell people that Brian was on our trip last year. Yeah.
I know, but I kept you from Odessa because my wife called me and said it was too hot for us to go there, and you deferred to my my Ukrainian wife on that.
I always defer to the wives. I've learned that. I may be 80 years old, but I've learned that.
Well, be safe, David, and then I'm looking forward to talking to you from Ukraine.
Okay, that'll be great.
Bring some interesting people on air for us on the next show.
I will try to do that. Okay.
That'd be great. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.